Great, thank you so much. Yes, so Space to Grow learning spaces were developed because our networks realised that access to education was a real issue for children. So Space to Grow learning spaces help children and young people with their learning, which has been disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and improve their psychosocial well-being. They're a safe and supportive learning space where children can develop coping skills, they can grow in confidence, and they can receive support with independent learning. And they can be set up either as a new space using the resources and the materials that we've developed, or they can be used, these resources and materials can be used within an existing non-formal learning centre. And there are many non-formal learning centres within the networks that we support. So the main outcomes for children that we want to see with this programme are that children make progress in self-defined learning goals. They set their own learning goals, that they improve their psychosocial well-being and their coping skills, that they develop a positive attitude towards lifelong learning, and that they are able to continue to engage with mainstream education where possible, and they are prevented from dropping out of school. So the next, yeah. So to run a learning space, Space to Grow learning space, you need a learning space coordinator. Ideally, that person has a teaching background, and they run and organise the learning space. And then there are learning mentors who work with groups of children. These are volunteers, and there's a ratio of around 1 learning mentor for up to 8 children up to the age of 8. And around one learning mentor to 10 children over the age of 8. So the learning mentors, they work with groups of children to help them with their psychosocial support and independent learning. So they select and run psychosocial activities and also collaborative learning activities and games of the children. And they help children to set their learning goals, and they support them with independent learning towards those goals. They also should know where to signpost the children if there are any concerns, and their other job is to connect with the families of those children. So in terms of the activities that have been developed to support psychosocial well-being, there are activities around expressing feelings and emotions, kind of helping children to understand what's happened through the pandemic and also thinking positively about the future, helping them to build their self-confidence and their self-esteem. And also there are activities around cooperation and learning. And then the activities to support independent learning would be helping children to set their own learning goals, helping children to develop a growth mindset, really believing that they can achieve things, supporting learning through the homework that they might have to do, helping children with numeracy and literacy, and also helping children to appreciate the environment. There are activities around that as well. So an example of a session in a learning place would be in a learning space, there would be a welcome and a registration. There would be an opening game or activity that promotes psychosocial well-being. It might target a specific theme. And then there's a time of independent and learning together. So that's a time for children to work on their own individual learning goals with the support of learning mentors. Could mean working on homework, or it could be practicing skills and reading or writing or numeracy or other topics that they've identified themselves. Also, there might be a chance for collaborative learning activities where there are more children learning together. And then at the end, there's a closing activity and reflecting on what they've learned. And the children all have a learning journal. So in the learning journal, they write their learning goals and then they monitor their progress against meeting those goals. So we have developed 4 kind of resources and materials to support the programme. There's a handbook for coordinators and mentors that gives details of how to set up and run a learning space. We've also developed training and PowerPoint slides which can be delivered online or face-to-face to learning coordinators and mentors to help them to know how to run activities for children. There's also a support resource guide, and that includes examples of activities and approaches to create a supportive learning environment, and that the activities that mentors can use to plan their sessions. And then there's the Space to Grow learning journal. That's for a journal to help each child set their own learning goals and reflect on their progress, and for the learning mentors and the parents to record the child's learning.
Thank you, Jane. So whilst we were, the main part of last year, we spent kind of developing the resources, using existing programs that have been really effective in Uganda and Nepal, and then thinking about how do we make it more accessible for those who need to set up quickly or maybe don't have the same resources as some of the networks, for example, in Uganda. And it's really exciting now that after the time developing the materials and then launching them, we do have networks starting to use these materials and children being able to benefit from the learning support. So in Venezuela, the last update I received, there were 5 learning spaces supporting 50 children. And there's a quote here, but I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we're going to hear more from Eileen in the next slot about how it's going in Venezuela. They're also up and running in Nepal. And so here's a couple of pictures. On the left is the first day of the learning space in Lalitpur. And here they're introducing each other. And yeah, you can see the teacher there in the red t-shirt. So there's 25 children enrolled in this learning space. And on the picture on the right is the learning space in Nuwakot. And again, slightly different model here. So there's 40 children taking part, but 20 in the mornings and 20 in the afternoons. And the one on the left is after school. So we want to have the flexibility so that it works for those running the learning spaces and for the community, the target community. So you can see in one country, 2 different, slightly different models of using the materials to best suit their needs, which is really encouraging. And we also have many networks gearing up to get going. So here's a list of countries where we will see learning spaces running in the next year. So many have already started the training and identifying the young people and finding the mentors. So yeah, in the next month or 2, we should see children going to the learning spaces and beginning to benefit from this learning support. Whereas Jane said, we really just want to see young people, their confidence rebuilt in learning after having missed up to or over a year of in-school education. We want them to be remaining in school or going back to school if they haven't yet returned. And yeah, to give them extra support where they feel behind as well, a space where they can be supported in their learning goals. So we're really encouraged that so many networks are taking up this model and wanting to support children to catch up and build confidence in learning again. So please pray in the next slot for all the young people that are attending and will be attending learning spaces, that they'll increase in confidence and see improvements in their learning. For the networks getting ready to run the learning spaces, that they will find the right volunteers and locations and be able to invite the children who would most benefit from the support. And also generally for young people struggling with their learning and unable to attend a space such as these, that there would be more initiatives like this established, even when there's not Viva partner networks, but so that children can have an opportunity to catch up and build confidence in their education more widely as well. Thank you.